Welcome to our online course, Managing Fire Safety to the Core Competency Standards. This course has been developed to satisfy the criteria laid down in the competency criteria for fire risk assessors. Now, fire safety legislation requires that for most premises except private dwellings, a fire risk assessment must be carried out to determine the risk to people from fire. Now, the legislation also requires that suitable measures are taken to ensure the safety of people from fire. Well, how do you determine the appropriate fire precautions required? Well, you carry out a fire risk assessment. Well, who should carry out a fire risk assessment? Well, a competent person. However, that does not mean that the duty holder has to employ the services of a fire safety specialist, such as a consultant, to carry out their fire risk assessment. For small, simple premises, it's often the duty holder that carries out the fire risk assessment themselves. And arguably, in these premises, the duty holder is the best person to do so because of their intimate knowledge of the premises and the activities therein. Now, guidance to support those wishing to carry out fire risk assessments themselves has been made available by the government, and it's covered in this presentation. However, for many premises, the duty holder seeks the services of an external fire consultant, known as a fire risk assessor. And in the case of larger, more complex or high-risk premises, this is often appropriate, as the task might well be well beyond the ability of the duty holder. Now, some members of the business community have suggested that it would be helpful for those who want to use the services of a commercial fire risk assessor to be able to access information on those with an appropriate level of competency in fire risk assessment to help them comply with the legislation. And there's also been growing concern regarding the competence of those who provide the fire risk assessments on a commercial basis, in other words, for a fee. Now, data from the English Fire and Rescue Service suggests that the main compliance failure leading to enforcement action is a failure by duty holders to carry out a suitable and sufficient fire risk assessment. That's the main one. They're not being carried out a suitable and sufficient fire risk assessment. And this is coupled with the emergence of inadequate fire risk assessments for premises that have suffered multiple fatality fires. And as a result of these concerns, the Fire Risk Assessment Competency Council, which comprises a broad group of relevant stakeholders, and these were listed as participants, emerged from the fire sector with the encouragement of the government. And its objective has been to establish agreed industry-wide criteria against which the competency of a fire risk assessor can be judged. Now, it's anticipated that these criteria will be used by professional bodies and third-party certification bodies who register or certificate fire risk assessors, and by commercial companies providing fire risk assessment services. Now, while it's very unlikely that third-party certification of this nature will become mandatory under legislation, the government does acknowledge the benefits to duty holders of third-party certification of fire protection products and services as a means of assisting in compliance with legislation. And this includes fire risk assessment services. Now, the guidance document will be subject to periodic review by the Fire Risk Assessment Council, Competency Council, so that it can be updated to reflect current thinking and experience in the fire safety community. And in response to this, we will be immediately updating this course to reflect those changes. And this ensures that anyone who is a candidate on our course will be covering the latest guidance. We will also be producing specialist courses for fire risk assessors to update their knowledge and maintain the CPD, which again is a requirement of the guidance for them to remain competent persons. So what is a competent person then? Well, a competent person is regarded as competent where they have sufficient training and experience or knowledge and other qualities to enable them properly to implement their role. Now, in the case of simple premises, where the fire risk assessor might, for example, be an employee of the occupier, it's possible that the following attributes of a fire risk assessor might be sufficient in conjunction with a study of suitable guidance documents, getting the guidance documents off the internet, for example. And even in such premises, even these simple premises, the fire risk assessor will need, first of all, an understanding of relevant current best fire safety practices in premises of the type in question. They'll also need an awareness of the limitations of the fire risk assessor's own experience and knowledge. They'll need a willingness and ability to supplement existing experience and knowledge when necessary by obtaining external help and advice. That's what they'll need. Now, complex premises will require a higher level of knowledge, understanding and preferably experience on the part of the fire risk assessor. Now, for such premises there will be a need for the specific applied knowledge and skills of an appropriately qualified specialist. And in such cases, evidence of specialist training and experience or membership of a professional body may assist in demonstrating competence. Now, in general, other than in the case of simple low-risk premises, fire risk assessors, particularly those offering their services on a commercial basis, need an appropriate knowledge of the following. First of all, the assessment of risk from fire. They need to know applicable legislation. They need to know appropriate guidance. They need to know the behaviour of fire in premises. They need to be aware of the effects of fire on people and behaviour of people in fire situations, how people are likely to react. They need to have a good understanding of the means of escape. They need an understanding of fire prevention and fire protection, and that includes both passive and active measures. And finally, very importantly, they need to understand the principles of the management of fire safety. Now, all of these are covered in appendixes in the guidance document and are covered in our course. Now, competence does not necessarily depend on the possession of specific qualifications, although these qualifications might contribute to the demonstration of competence. In the context of this, knowledge can be obtained by, you've got academic study, you've got training, working alongside others, short courses, and CPD, or any combination of these. And education is likely to involve formal education of a relatively academic nature, and it often culminates in an actual qualification. Training involves training of a particular nature, and that is often given on the job. Now, it's not implied that education, training and experience in the principles of fire safety need to be extensive, provided that the combination of them all gives you adequate knowledge. And moreover, a high level in respect of any of these might compensate for a lower level in another. Now, it's essential that the level of competence be sufficient to allow the fire risk assessor to identify correctly the significant risks. That's what they should be looking for, the significant risks, especially combined risks, and to draw up a list of them with appropriate actions to address them. Now, this course has been developed to satisfy all the core competencies, and to demonstrate how they have been achieved, we have produced the core competency checklist. So you can actually tick off which modules satisfy which competence. Now, this can be downloaded from our site, and it will be referenced where the relevant competence is covered. And also, as mentioned, we're actually producing specialist courses on our site for fire risk assessors who deal with any special risks. For example, one of the courses is our smoke control course. This is ideal for any risk assessor who wishes to carry out a fire risk assessment in any premises with an atrium or smoke control system. To be able to carry out a fire risk assessment in these buildings, you need to understand what they are, and that's what our course has been specifically designed for. We hope you enjoy our course.